Welcome to the 35mm focal length of the SLR Lounge Canon Lens Wars series. Now we are going to break this one up into 3 parts. We have a total of 8 lenses in this focal length. So in the first video, we're just going to be comparing the 35mm primes, being the 35mm f2 and its big brother, the 35mm 1.4L. Now for those that are new to the SLR Lounge Canon Lens Wars series, be sure to check out the intro teaser video where we introduce this series, we talk about our testing methodology and the overall approach and goal, and also all the other videos on each focal length as well. Now something interesting happened here. When we're comparing these 2 images from the 35mm f2 to the 35mm 1.4 at the respective WOAs, it was hard to see a major difference. I mean, if I flipped back and forth several times between these 2 images, then eventually I could distinguish which lens was which. And that was basically because the 35mm 1.4L did have a bit more bokeh. But if they weren't side by side, if I wasn't flipping back and forth between these 2 images over and over, it wouldn't really be that easy to distinguish. In fact, it'd be actually quite difficult. However, the sharpness on the 35mm f2 at f2 was noticeably better than the 35mm 1.4 at 1.4. And particularly this was noticeable towards the center of the frame. Now, of course, both lenses are quite sharp and very usably sharp, of course, when wide open, but at f2, the cheaper 35mm is just a little bit better, and even at the edge of the frame was a little bit more sharp. But once we stepped up to their WCA, or their widest common aperture of f2, that's where the 35mm L began to flex its big brother muscles over the 35mm f2. It was just a bit more sharp all around, from center to the edge of the image, but the difference was kind of more noticeable when we were pixel peeping side by side, and rather difficult to see when just viewing the image normally. At the same WCA of f2, the 1.4L also displayed more creamy and kind of a smoother bokeh, or just a better aesthetic quality of the bokeh than the 35mm f2. Color is also a slightly bit more vibrant and contrasty in the 35mm L than in the standard 35mm as well. Now moving up again to f2.8, this is where basically the aesthetic quality and the amount of bokeh really began to equalize between these 2 lenses. If we zoom in, we can still see that the 35mm L's bokeh is just a bit smoother, a bit softer, and a bit more sexy. But overall, they're still extremely comparable and virtually impossible to distinguish when simply viewed side by side at full screen. We can only tell when we zoom in to compare. The center to edge sharpness and overall contrast and color still is kind of ahead on the 35mm L, and it stands out a bit more than just the standard 35. But the difference is very negligible beyond f2.8. All right, now we're getting to the good part. Well, actually, I don't know how this is good because talking about price always kind of sucks. But the difference in cost between these 2 lenses is huge. The 1.4L costs around $1,500, where compared to the f2, and this is the f2 IS, this costs only $549. And in fact, you can get the non-image stabilized version of the f2 for even cheaper at $319. So does the perceivable or the visual differences merit the 3 to 4 time additional cost? Well, if you need low light performance at the 35mm focal length, then probably. The 35mm 1.4L does give you an extra stop of light beyond the 35 f2, but both are great low light lenses. I mean, compared to say like a 24-70, they still give you an extra stop of light. In addition, in terms of the amount and the aesthetic quality of the bokeh, the 1.4L doesn't really create necessarily that big of a difference to justify the 3 time cost over this lens. So what's the verdict between these 2 lenses? Well, let's say for a second that you're only comparing these 2 lenses with one another. There's no other lenses in your mind, just these 2. All right, so unless you absolutely need the extra stop of light with the 1.4, then I would say save the $1,000, go with the 35mm f2, and if you're not, say, shooting DSLR cinema, or if you don't need the IS, I would skip the IS version and save the extra $200 and spend $300 for a lens that's gonna do basically the exact same thing without image stabilization. The bottom line is, for the price difference between these 2 lenses, you simply aren't gonna be seeing that big of a difference between these lenses at their respective wide open apertures, unless you are side by side, say, pixel peeping, or unless you just absolutely must have the best image quality whatsoever. But it's tough to tell. But hold on to your wallets for just a moment. Let's go look at the other zooms in the 35mm focal length in the next video, and then let's see if the 35mm primes can still hold their own against our top pick in the zooms. Thanks for watching the 35mm focal length installment in the SLR Lounge Canon Lens Wars series. Now be sure to check out the actual article for this video by clicking the link in the description below the video for more example images, more information on each of these lenses, and so forth, as well as information on where to purchase. My name is Pye, and I'll see you all in the next video.